Flowerhorn cichlid, care guide, tank size, diet and more. The flowerhorn cichlid is an absolute necessity have for all admirers of vivid and huge fish. This fascinating excellence introduces a brilliant blend of agile appearance and one-of-a-kind hue. There are not very many aquarists that lament getting a flowerhorn for their own assortment. Their lavish appearance joined with their toughness has made them one of the most looked for after cichlids. This fish is an extraordinary beginning stage, paying little heed to whether you have managed such species previously or not. They are a bit of tropical enchantment. Does that sound like something you have been searching for? At that point, continue perusing as we talk about each part of keeping these hypnotizing fish. Category rating: care level, intermediate; temperament, moderate to aggressive; color form, blue, purple, green, reddish and many more; lifespan, up to 10 years; size, up to 16 inches; minimum tank size, 75 gallon; tank setup, freshwater, few planted; compatibility, limited. Overview: the flowerhorn cichlid is a man-made animal categories which was specifically reared by Chinese fish-keeping aficionados at the turn of this century. This implies no such fish exists in the wild, and its nearest family members are South African cichlids. Be that as it may, given the deplorable propensity for giving fish a chance to out into the wild, a few varieties of flowerhorns have been brought into the regular habitat and now wander the waters in certain pieces of the world. This fish is the after effect of specifically reproducing diverse South African species. Like their precursors, they have a prolonged body and an extraordinary head shape. These Goliaths likewise have a really great life expectancy and can satisfy 12 years. Their ubiquity has been on the ascent since their absolute first appearance, available around 1996. These fish can be found in pretty much every shop regardless of where on the planet you are. Costs are not spending benevolent, however, with a normal cost of $35 for a medium measured fish. Run-of-the-mill behavior: these half-and-halves have held the forceful conduct seen in numerous cichlids, similar to Jack Dempsey fish or their different family members. They are not exceptionally inviting to outside species and frequently get into battles with one another. Despite the fact that they are not tutoring fish, regardless they want to swim together 2 by 2, this helps bring down their hostility and makes them feel less focused. Flowerhorns are a forceful bundle, however, with cautious arranging this can be survived, and you will have the option to appreciate these bright monsters close by different species. Because of their cumbersome body, these fish are somewhat moderate when you contrast them with littler fish. Much the same as in their characteristic living space, these species want to go here and there the water segment instead of simply remain in a specific layer in the tank. Flowerhorn cichlid appearance: flowerhorn cichlids have a stretched body that is somewhat compacted from the sides. In spite of the fact that there are a few assortments with an increasingly adjusted body looking like even a plate, their dorsal and butt-centric balances stretch right to the base of their tail. One of their characterizing highlights is their lump head with profoundly planted eyes. It is one of the most famous sights in the fish-keeping scene. You will have the option to perceive a flowerhorn by their outline, as it were. Both their butt-centric and dorsal balances have a long, mesh-like consummation. Their tail is practically round and is more slender than their different balances. Their pectoral blades are exquisite, here and there nearly transparent, however, are a lot shorter than every single other one. This impossible-to-miss shape is joined with a rich determination of hues. They have a tremendous assortment extending from brilliant to red-hot red to light purple. These numerous hues are joined by various examples. Regardless of whether you are searching for a plain mono-shaded fish or a colorful blend, flowerhorn strains have you shrouded for each situation. Their body shape originates from other South African cichlids which they were reproduced from. Flowerhorn cichlid habitat and tank conditions. Flowerhorn cichlids are fish that have been reproduced in imprisonment as far back as they have been exhibited to the more extensive open. In light of this, we can't state without a doubt what wild environment they feel generally great. However, all things considered, their favored conditions would to a great extent remain equivalent to most different cichlids. These species are generally found in warm, moderately hard tropical waters. They favor moderate moving bowls with a pleasantly protected riverbed that has a liberal measure of live plants on the base and furthermore a wide scope of potential prey. These conditions can without much of a stretch be duplicated in any tank. The main thing confusing it is the enormous volume they require. Tank setup. These fish love clean waters with a moderate stream. This is the reason it's prescribed to utilize an incredible channel like a canister. It's likewise critical to consistently keep up the tank with visit water changes and a cleaning normal, as flowerhorns can be a serious and tidy fish. Water parameters are critical to guarantee that your fish don't get debilitated and their characteristic rhythms are maintained and control. The prescribed temperature for these species is 78.8 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. The water corrosiveness can likewise affect their well-being, so ought to be kept in the scope of 6.5 to 7.8 picohenries, while the hardness ought to be kept inside the accompanying extent, 9 to 20 dgh. Watching out for these parameters consistently is the way to keeping them sound. With regards to brightening the aquarium, it turns into more entangled. Flowerhorns truly appreciate uncovering the substrate and regularly separate live plants. For the substrate, it's smarter to utilize mono-shaded rock and a lot of rocks and driftwood to make counterfeit spread. Ensure that all adornments are verified in light of the fact that they may wind up simply finding them, and because of its size can without much of a stretch turn them over. Additionally, ensure that the substrate is sheltered to utilize and doesn't contain sharp or broken grains. What size aquarium do they need? Flowerhorn cichlids are entirely requesting with regards to tank volume. You ought to distribute in any event 70 gallons for each one fish and 150 gallons for every pair. On the off chance that you plan on keeping them with different cichlids or species, you will require at any rate 215 gallons. Flowerhorn cichlid tank mates. Most of cichlids have gotten known as entirely forceful species with constrained similarity. Sadly, flowerhorn cichlids are not a special case. Try not to be disheartened, however. There are still some fish that can be kept with them in the event that you cautiously plan. Since this fish was reproduced misleadingly and has never truly left the tank, we can't state without a doubt what fish they would swim alongside in nature. Be that as it may, we can break down the similarity of their progenitors and go from that point. It is smarter to either keep these fish alone at 2x2. To start with, the aquarium ought to be at any rate 150 gallons on the off chance that you will keep flowerhorns with other fish. This is to stay away from clashes and keep fish sound. The best tank mates are generally fish of comparable size or marginally greater with a comparable disposition, for instance, pyropitinga, leopard pleco, different plecos and jaguar cichlids. Other fish that would make great tank mates incorporate giant gourami, Oscar cichlids, suckermouth armored catfish, spotted hoplo, spotted Raphael catfish, lowland cichlids and bushy-nosed catfish. The flowerhorn won't be a decent counterpart for littler, more slow fish. In the event that their neighbor is essentially more fragile, they won't spare a moment to assault them. Likewise, stay away from little fish that are excessively dynamic on the grounds that these will regularly raise a ruckus by disturbing cichlids. Keeping flowerhorn cichlids together. Flowerhorn cichlids can be kept together, yet their forceful nature makes keeping them together troublesome. It isn't incomprehensible, yet you would need to guarantee that there is sufficient free space for each person. 150 plus gallons, and they all get enough nourishment so they would not have something to battle about. Diet. The flowerhorn cichlid has a major craving which appears to be very sensible when you consider their size. They will joyfully benefit from whatever winds up in the tank, be it live nourishments or solidified ones. Being omnivores, they likewise require a verdant expansion to their eating regimen. They eat a wide range of nourishments, yet it's critical to ensure that their nourishment is wealthy in protein, as this is the intensifier that makes up a large portion of their eating routine. The assortment of the eating routine is similarly as significant as the quality. In view of that, you can give flowerhorns pre-made nourishments for huge cichlids, shrimp, bloodworms, different worms, dried crickets, dried grasshoppers, little fish fillets or gammaris. Notwithstanding the substantial base of the eating routine, you ought to likewise incorporate some plant-based nourishments. This should be possible either through purchasing pre-bundled ready-made verdant nourishments at the store or getting live plants for the tank. The last alternative is more requesting, as fish will frequently separate the stem of the plants or uncover it. Grown-ups ought to be fed a few times each day, relying upon how well their stomach-related framework functions. In the event that the size of the part is correct, the fish ought to for the most part be finished eating in a short time. On the off chance that that is not the case, or you see nourishment lying at the base of the tank, take a stab at lessening the sum you give. Other than that, they are viewed as a truly sound animal categories and won't require any extra enhancements. These are entirely solid fish and needn't bother with a mess of care. Their eating regimen ought not be an issue either on account of their sound hunger. While actually this fish can be kept by learners, the size of the tank puts most apprentices off. This implies you will invest much more energy in cleaning the tank and dealing with the hardware. In addition to the fact that they are huge regional also, which muddles things significantly further. Their forceful conduct can be somewhat outrageous at times, to the degree that flowerhorns may even assault the proprietor during encouraging. Despite the fact that this seldom happens, it doesn't damage to focus while putting your hands near the water to abstain from inciting these monsters. Shouldn't something be said about general diseases at that point? Fortunately, they are not vulnerable to any ailment specifically, but rather there are still a few things you should pay special mind to. For example, mechanical harm is a major issue for huge and dynamic fish. They can without much of a stretch hurt themselves when uncovering the substrate or swimming near sharp shakes. The entirety of this can without much of a stretch be evaded in the event that you channel the substrate in advance and guarantee that no sharp pieces slip into the tank.